Welcome back, Beans Army, to another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast, the college offseason podcast. Okay, Matt's on the show. So, where
That's
we're,
right.
yeah, that's right. So, I have to change the intro a little bit. So, we're for the fans, by the fans. I hope everyone's been enjoying these great conference college basketball tournaments. I know during the ACC tournament, my heart stopped a couple times. And Matt, I know, has been looking at some of the mid-major tournaments and enjoying some of that basketball. And I know Ryan's right there with me as far as his heart stopping a couple times in some of these games. But what we're going to talk about today, as the college basketball season is getting towards the end for a lot of teams that playing in college basketball, as the major tournament starts back up, um, a lot of moves are already happening because we are the college offseason podcast, which means coaches are getting fired, coaches are getting hired, and players are already announcing that they're hitting the transfer portal. So one thing we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about some early coaching moves. And of course, Matt is going to have his own segment where he's going to give you the best players from the mid-major conferences that are going to be entering the transfer portal or to be expected to enter the transfer portal because you know what? We like to have fun here on this podcast. So that's what we're going to do today. So, anyways, so we officially can get started. One of the first coaching moves that we're going to talk about is a local legend, Scotty Davenport, former Bellarmine head coach, officially retires after 20 seasons as the Knights head coach. His son Doug is going to take over. During his career, Scotty Davenport had 426 wins with a 684 career win percentage, which is by far the best in Bellarmine history. They won the Division II national championship in 2011, and he famously moved the Knights to Division I on July 1st of 2020, which is probably one of his biggest claims to fame. But even more so, being that we're all kind of local guys in the Louisville, Southern Indiana area, what kind of sums up the image of Scotty Davenport's career? Which one of y'all has that one?
Um, I don't know if Matt wants to say
No,
something
you
too.
go first, Ryan.
All right. So, you know, Scotty Davenport is a legend here. When you think of basketball in the Louisville area, besides the University of Louisville, you think of Scotty Davenport. I've met him a couple times. He's a great person. I went to his camp when I was younger and broke my arm. Actually, I was trying to save the ball. I was trying to lay out and save the ball from going out of bounds, and I broke my arm. He refunded my whole family the amount that they had to pay for it because it was a lot. He's a really great person, and he's a legend here. I mean, what he's done for Bellarmine has been crazy and great for the program. Obviously, led him to D1. Um, has won a ton. His offenses are so fun to watch. There was something I was gonna say. Um, yeah, and in his, I think it was his first year, they won the conference, and I think it's so stupid that they couldn't get an NCAA tournament. That's one of the dumbest rules that we have, not being because you have to wait a couple years to get an NCAA tournament. But Scotty Davenport is a legend, and Bellarmine will miss him. I know this year wasn't great, and some of the previous years weren't great, but he's really what brought the program of Bellarmine up and rising, and now in D1. And now people know who Bellarmine basketball is and who Scotty Davenport was.
Okay, is it my turn now? It's
Yep.
my turn now. Okay, I think the thing that stands out the most to me about like the whole situation here with Scotty Davenport is the fact we know who he is. Let's just start with that. We live in one of the biggest, most obsessive college basketball markets in the country, where three major traditional powers have fan bases, and they've had some pretty exciting, interesting, and terrible coaches during that span. And even during the early 2010s, when Bellarmine, which has been primarily a Division II school the majority of my life, not Ryan's, but my life and Les's, we're talking about a guy like when we talk about Rick Pitino and John Calipari, two Naismith Memorial Hall of Famers, multiple time national champ. Well, not multiple, have multiple national championships. Between the two of them, And there's Indiana too with like their coaching searches, Tom Crean, all that stuff. And a guy from a Division II school nestled between the Louisville Zoo and a hospital still somehow managed to at least get a little bit of that pie in like when they were a Division II school and now because he's just such a good guy and he is a good coach. I think we almost forget about the fact he does have so many wins and the Division II championship because he is such a good person. Even if he was a terrible coach, I think we'd all love him. But it just says a lot about the character of a human being and their quality as a coach. When in this area of the country they can break through against guys like Rick Pitino, John Calipari, Tom Crean, etc., lots of ranked teams to get some headlines and get that media coverage and to be in the community. There are I don't think anybody in Indianapolis knows or cares who the coach at the University of Indianapolis is, or hell, even IU Indy. But Scotty Davenport did that. He did that. He broke through in a market that's already saturated with some of the biggest personalities and biggest programs in college basketball and try and established himself and its whole entire school. And what was I going to say? The biggest shame of it, like Ryan says, in fact, we'll never know how good that team that won the ASUN tournament actually was. I thought they were really good. They had upset potential, and we'll just never know because of the stupid NCAA tournament rule. But I think that's always another thing he did. Is he made us aware of that god awful rule. And the other thing I'll remember Scotty Davenport for is, like we said, it didn't end the way he wanted. You weren't winning championship games, but the guy was a fearless scheduler. If that makes any sense at all. I mean, the guy was going to North Carolina one week and then flying out to UCLA the next. He was not scared of anybody. He wanted to give his guys the best experiences, and the best way to learn is from learning from the great programs, learning from the established guys. And he was unafraid to be that mid-major buy game, and I really appreciate that in a guy. So that's what I think of is like the fact he was able to burst through in this market at all shows what a good coach he was and what a good human being he was.
One of the things that I think of with Scotty Davenport, and definitely I agree with everything you all said. Guy is a local legend, phenomenal basketball coach. But one of the first things that stands out when I think of Scotty Davenport was an article that was written by Billy Reed a few years ago. Um, Matt, I think already knows what I'm talking about.
Yes. Can I preface this with something before you
Yes,
go?
absolutely, absolutely.
My best friend in real life is named Billy Reed. And there's anytime we go out and we do something in the South End, he's like, do not address me by my name. Because of that journalist who wrote that article. He doesn't want to get yelled at. So he's my real life best friend, and his name is also Billy Reed. So every time I hear about this article, I just smile because it's like, oh, that's why I can't say my friend's name whenever we go to Shack in the Back.
For those who don't know what we're talking about, there was an article written by Billy Reed, a local journalist, who was talking about Scotty Davenport taking Bellarmine to the Division I ranks. And the very beginning of the article, he gives some very bland stereotypes about South End Louisville, and it made a lot of South Enders very, very upset, to say the least. However, when you read the entire article, what he's getting at is how the South End molded Scotty Davenport with this great worth ethic to where he was able to get this done. So, of course, and then he comes out with the follow-up article where we find out that Billy Reed is a South Ender himself. So, I just remember like all that hysteria that was caused by that, and it just goes to show, read the full article to get their full opinion. Don't just go off the first paragraph, don't go off your first feelings. Read the whole article because it ended up making some very good points about the work ethic that comes from a lot of people that do come from the South End. Yes, the South End, has their stereotypes, some true, some not true, but anytime you get put in that situation, it also opens doors for to be able to mold people to instill themselves in with a very, very strong work ethic. So yes, moral of that story, read the whole article. But so we don't spend the whole time on Scotty Davenport. We're going to get into more coaching moves, which speaking of legacy coaches and legacy coaches that are going to need to be replaced, Florida State has found their replacement for Leonard Hamilton, and they have hired former Kings assistant Luke Lux. So tell me what your all's thoughts on this hire was.
Well, I could tell you, I honestly don't know much about Luke Locks. I'll be honest. I know he was an assistant coach with the Kings and he went to Florida State. But I do know a thing as a distant supporter now of a team who hired an alumnus who was an NBA coach at some point that sometimes it doesn't work out the way you think. And I know that Luke Locks is not Mike Woodson, but there is what we call the hump to adjusting to coaching in the NBA and coaching in college basketball, even if they are becoming a lot similar. So, like I said, I don't really know that much about Luke Locks as an assistant. All I know is that like hiring an alumnus who coached in the NBA can sometimes be a rocky road that results in very weird places for your program to go. And especially when you're trying to follow a legend like Leonard Hamilton, who another guy who brought his program to prominence in a very loaded ACC or reinvigorated that prominence. It's interesting because I know he's a young. I know Luke Locks is a young guy, so that's a positive. You want a young guy who's got a little bit more energy, can hit the trail a little bit. But I'm just have a very tainted view on this subject simply because every time I think I've seen someone hire an NBA guy, especially when it hits locally, it doesn't go super duper well. I mean, it's not as bad as you think, but it's also a roller coaster of which you cannot on which you cannot get off. So
Mike
those are
Woodson
my
got Indiana fans down bad right now.
not even Mike Woodson. It's the coaching search in general, man. I mean, you'd think he's worse than Kenny Payne. You really would if you believe the message boards, and he's not. It's a roller coaster, man. It's a roll. You go from beating Ohio State and feeling good, and then you lay an egg against the Ducks. So it's weird. So, like I said, I don't know. I don't know much about Luke Locks, but I do know about the roller coaster that is hiring an NBA guy. So that's my initial thought on the matter.
Ryan, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about him either, but I'm gonna go kind of with Matt. I'm not loving the hire because of his lack of experience with. He's never been a head coach. He's never done recruiting. He's just been in the NBA. I know he's helped out guys like Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox whenever he was with the Kings, but I just feel like the experience is not there, and I could be totally wrong. He could really work out. I know he's a Florida State alum. He was with them in like 2012. Went to an ACC championship game, something like that. But I just I love the young guy aspect of them really knowing the game of basketball and them growing into the head coaching spot. But I just feel like there's not enough experience there with being a head coach and with the all recruiting in the college basketball era now.
As many question marks surround Luke Locks' hire at Florida State, he does check two boxes for me. One, being a former player, it's easier for the fan base to buy in, being one of their own. And number two, the fact that he did coach in the NBA, which definitely helps with recruiting. Once you've coached the NBA, the place where all the college basketball players want to eventually go, that does help in recruiting. Matt, why are you looking at me like that?
You, former player helps the fan base buy in. I'm getting the phone call from Kenny Payne. I'm getting the phone call from Mike Woodson.
I'm getting a
Patrick
phone call for
Ewing,
Mark Pope. I'm getting a phone call from John Shire.
Patrick
I
Ewing's
can
on line
we can
3.
play this
Chris
game. We can
Coleman's
play
on
this
line
game all day, bro.
4.
I'm getting a phone call from actually no, he's never mind. I wasn't gonna say I was about to say Hubert Davis, but no,
Yeah, yeah,
we ain't
you
gonna go
were.
there.
You were going there. I got good stuff.
All I'm gonna say is Jalen Withers is Duke's most valuable player after last night.
Yeah, that's one of the most probably rarest ways to lose.
I can't
I bet
imagine.
Louisville fans are glad he's gone.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we are. Don't worry. Yeah, yeah, we are.
Anyways, yes, there is definitely to be mixed emotions about the Luke Locks hire at Florida State, and according to the panel, we all have mixed emotions about former players taking their head coaching jobs. Um,
Mostly,
Mostly Matt, but yeah, like we said, I think Mike Woodson has Indiana fans down pretty bad right now. I really want to start reading those message boards because those sound very entertaining.
do not.
You're
Like,
just convincing me to read them now.
do you
The
want you
worse you say they are, the more I want to read them.
toxicity will make you radioactive less. You don't want to go on there.
I could argue I'm already radioactive.
No, that's true.
Just call me Imagine Dragons because I'm already radioactive.
You are part of the Duke and Texas fan
So
base.
you're
So
gonna
Right. And
Imagine
no, you're talking,
Dragon.
yeah, you're
Never
talking to
mind.
a Duke fan where like an early November loss is the end of the world.
What'd you say about Imagine Dragon?
I said, call me Imagine Dragons because I'm radioactive.
I don't know if I should say it or not.
I think you should. You already just made it official on the podcast. You should say what you were thinking.
Can you imagine dragging these balls across your face?
Well, there goes all of our respect.
Hey yo.
Hey, you have to know that joke, right?
Yes,
I
I
do
do.
know that.
Okay.
You know, as soon as you said it, I knew where it was going, and you know what? I deserved it because I opened myself up for that. So
It happens. It happens to everyone. It happens to everyone.
it happens. It's becoming an every podcast thing now, and I'm not mad at it because it makes for good humor. But you know, hey,
On the next show, Les will sing Thunder in its entirety.
You know, what if someone just turns on the show and they just start at that point right before I say that?
imagine, yes.
Are they clicking right off the show? Because
You know, it is the internet. That'd probably add more people to the show.
yeah, really good.
He's gonna
I do want to
Ryan
say,
is the next
at this where you said, at the start your intro, I've never heard about the intro with the fans. I like that. I don't think I've heard that yet.
That's because he uses the other one with you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
when Matt's on the show, he hates the less of the regular season but more of the off season intro. So when Matt's on the show, I have to change it.
But I like both. I like both.
See, I prefer the less of the regular
Hey,
season
Ryan,
but more
you
of the
like-
off season. But Matt, I'm just trying to make Matt
Yeah.
happy.
You should. Wait, Ryan, you like both?
Where is this going?
He, Ryan knows I'm trying to catch him.
No,
He likes both? Like both of these nuts?
Got
Listen.
him.
yeah. Less
I
is
had-
over is turned.
Were we talking about coaches?
Yeah, let's get on to the next coach. NC State fires Kevin Keats. Despite making the Final Four last year, Kevin Keats has 3 tournament appearances in 8 years. So the next question I have for you all is who should be the next NC State head coach? And given what we've talked about on this podcast so far, I feel like you all are not going to like my choice, but you all tell me yours first.
Okay, Ryan, I went first last time, so you go first this time.
Okay. I do want to say because I think this was on the outline. I really don't think he should have been fired yet because of his huge run last year. I just feel like they had no talent this year. I mean, they had Louisville players from Louisville this past year of Louisville, like before Pat Kelsey. So I mean, that's a bad look, anyways. But and I think they have young talent like Trey Parker. I think he could be really good for NC State, but I don't think Kevin Keats should have been fired yet. But to replace him is a guy who's on Arkansas staff, big man who just had a head coaching. No, I'm just kidding. Not Kenny Payne. Kenny Payne is still looking for a head coaching job, but this will not be it. I had Justin Gainey who's associate head coach for Tennessee because he knows the program well. This is going back to the knowing the program well, and or also Will Wade, McNeese State head coach, who's got them rolling. So
I feel
those are
like
my two candidates.
I feel like Will Wade's going to be a very popular name.
He's
and-
in every coaching search.
I know, yeah. I feel like we're gonna talk about Will Wade on every podcast from here till next season.
Yeah, I mean
Unless the podcast we do football.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we can work him into that. Paying out
Yeah.
like Will Wade.
We could find it. We can make it happen.
We can make it.
it would be like a random team. It's like who could replace him at head coach? Will Wade.
Screw it. Will Wade. Make the transition to football. Do it. And bring your manager with you.
Oh
Aye.
yes, the goat.
The GOAT.
I don't even know his name.
I don't either, but he's
Oh, that's all you need to know.
the GOAT, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
He's the boombox guy.
He is
Yeah,
the
he holds the boombox.
Wherever Will Wade goes, just bring the boombox guy.
He's got it's like a 2-for-1 package.
Exactly. It's great for PR.
Yeah,
True,
it gets your team
it is.
hyped up, whether they're good or not.
Well, I hope you're not ready to move on from Will Wade because Will Wade is actually the guy I was going to talk about.
Oh,
So
there we go. We
Go
couldn't
ahead.
even not even
Will
five
Wade,
not even 5 minutes, and we already talking about Will Wade again.
I think Will Wade would be like a great fit for the North Carolina State job, and here's why. When you look around the ACC right now, Leonard Hamilton's gone, Jim Larinaga is gone, Syracuse is possibly going to fire their coach sooner rather than later. We don't know what's going on with North Carolina. Wake Forest is kind of in a weird position. The coaches right now, and we only know Hubert Davis because of the controversy and the success his first year, are the only ACC coaches now are like John Shire, Hubert Davis, and because he's only been there a year and turned everything around, Pat Kelsey are like the only three people ACC coaching wise who I hear about like on a regular basis. There's a gap there. There's a little bit of a vacuum. And if you're a guy like Will Wade who's got that pedigree and that experience with, you know, winning, some might say underhandedly, but guess what? We don't have to worry about that anymore. You can take that personality to a program like North Carolina State that's got history, that's got resources, and that already has a couple pieces in place, like Ryan said, and you could easily become the third or fourth biggest coach in the ACC already. And then you have that pool of resources. You got those players. You're in North Carolina. You've got program history. Just run with it. Like I said, there's a bit of a coaching vacuum outside of like the top three in the ACC right now. And we don't know. Brad Brunell, he could be in Indiana next year. You know, you don't even have to worry about him and Clemson. He could be at IU. So why wouldn't you, if you're Will Wade, you've been looking to get back? It's a high pressure job. Yeah, like I said, they fired a guy after a Final Four run. But if he did, and we easily forget because of that bias, how close he was to getting fired. Not only getting fired, but losing to Louisville. Not this year, the Kenny Payne Louisville team in the ACC tournament first game. But that doesn't happen. They go on the miracle run. DJ Burns becomes God for a month, and they make the Final Four. But before that, we were wondering if Kevin Keatts was even going to have a job. He got a good run, and that run ended. And now, if you're Will Wade, you know, there's that vacuum that's forming there. You could easily become that third or fourth guy in the ACC, a conference that's been trending downward, that could have a couple coaches head out to different greener pastures. There's no Tony Bennett. There's no Jim Boeheim. There's no Jim Larinaga. And there's no Leonard Hamilton to compete with. You might as well just shoot for the moon and go for it if you're North Carolina State. Get Will Wade, see if he can keep that recruiting mojo up, and run with it. And finally, I would like to say the biggest loser in this whole situation, Brandon Huntley Hatfield, man.
Oh yeah.
He played his heart out on those god awful Louisville teams. And he transfers out when they hire Kelsey. And, you know, that makes sense. You want your own guys. You want to recruit your own guys. I don't blame him at all. And you go to a team that made the Final Four last year that's losing a lot, but, you know, still made the Final Four, still has Will Middlebrooks, has DJ Wagner, and you just end up on a team that doesn't even qualify for the conference tournament, which you actually did do at Louisville by default, but still, that's got to hurt, man, especially for a guy who hustled that hard
Yeah.
for like some really, really crappy basketball teams.
He was a
There we go.
rebounding machine.
He was. He really was. I hope he finds a new home soon. A home where he can win.
Yeah, he's a very likable player for sure. And given what we've talked about on this podcast, I feel like this is not going to be a very popular option, but I think Julius Hodge might be worth a shot to get it hired at NC State. I mean, he's done a very good job at Lincoln College in the Division II level, and of course, being that he is a former NC State player, I kind of like the trend personally, but then again, I'm on the Duke fan side of this where we have hired one of our own and we're doing really well with Coach John Shire. So I guess I have a different opinion.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, see, I knew it wasn't going to be. Yeah, given these guys, yeah, these guys are not a
Ooh.
fan. Exactly.
I do like the Division II angle because that would be like very dishonest to my screen name right now if I was like, don't hire Division II guys.
Right. But I have a feeling we're going to get to that. And one that me and Matt might actually agree with. And I just also want to point out that Ryan wasn't even born when Julius Hodge was playing at NC State.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough.
Is it time to move on?
Yes, it's time to move on. I've seen too many juniors this week already from guys who played in the NBA in these conference tournaments. I don't need to be reminded that I'm slowly fading away into the ether of the universe, Les.
Jace Richardson.
And he's got another son that's playing high school too.
Oh God! All right, what are we talking? Are we talking about Fran McCaffrey now?
We can go to Fran McCaffrey unless you want me to talk about Steph taking the Davidson GM gig.
Either or.
I'll just go ahead and say that Steph Curry has announced that he is going to be the next GM for the basketball team at Davidson. He's already going to put 10 million of his own money down for the NIL fund. Imagine you're a mid-major transfer, which I feel like Matt's going to get into here in a little bit. I don't
It's
feel like
gonna
it. I know
happen.
it. We scheduled the show. What am I talking about? But imagine you're a mid-major transfer and Steph Curry meets with you and says, "Hey, you want to come play for Davidson?" It's going to be tough to turn down.
It will be tough to turn down. Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, now we can get into Fran McCaffrey. So in case you missed it, Iowa has fired head coach Fran McCaffrey, the winningest coach in Iowa history. So now, roundtable, who should be the next Hawkeyes head coach?
Well, the answer may be in my username, or it could be. Yeah, I think Ben McCollum's got a good shot here. I mean, he's the hot talent right now. I know it's only like his first year in Division One, but when you look at what he's done this year, it's very impressive. He's kind of like the anti-Fran McCaffrey too, in the fact we're not going to have to bring back the lovely FranCon scale for him. I know it's only been a year at the Division One level, but as we're going to discuss later, he can bring a couple pieces with him to Iowa. The one thing that most people use as a detraction when they talk about Ben McCollum is the way he plays. It is a very defensive minded, methodical style of basketball. That's it drove Tony Bennett out of the league. It drove who was the coach? Was Bo Ryan out? But there's also a chance you could become the Bo Ryan Wisconsin or Tony Bennett Virginia of the 2020s if you do that. And in the Big Ten, let me tell you, folks, it works. It will work because Big Ten basketball is still Big Ten basketball, whether it's 1945 or 1925 or 2025. It's still Big Ten basketball to me, and it's going to be methodical, plotting, defensive minded. What the hell is a 3-point shot anyway? Type basketball. Even though Wisconsin, they've discovered the three this year, and it's been to their success. But there are still a lot of teams that don't do that. So if you're going to hire a defensive minded kind of new shiny new toy coach, it's probably going to be Ben McCollum. Now the question with this is, how badly does Indiana want Ben McCollum, and how much are you willing to bid to get him away? And are you going to enter into a bidding war with Indiana? That's if Indiana wants him. And to me, that's the biggest question mark: is can you compete with Scott Dolson? Can you compete with the Indiana donors? And how's that going to work out for you? How high are you willing to go? Because if I was Ben McCollum, I'd rather be in Iowa because the pressure is a little bit less than it is in Bloomington, as we've seen recently.
As much as it's a surprise on this podcast that me and Matt are actually going to agree with each other because I also think Ben McCollum would be the ideal hire for Iowa. I feel like he's going to hate my reasoning because I'm not just going to go with a 30-3 in his first season as the Drake head coach, but also the fact I'm going to keep a popular trend here is the fact that he is an Iowa native. He was born in Iowa City to be exact, and he grew up in Storm Lake. So yeah,
Iowa.
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 So yeah, he does have some history with the city, the state, etc.
Everything.
He has a history with everything. That's right. Ryan, you got anything to add before? I think Matt's
Yeah.
getting antsy.
Besides Will Wade, I think that I was gonna say Ben McCollum, but I don't want to be the same.
Gosh, dang it, we can't escape Will Wade. Dang it,
He's everywhere, baby.
But
he is everywhere. He's like Thanos. He's inevitable, just like Matt said on the last episode.
he can take every job. Come on now.
He could coach every D1 program at once.
Yeah. I don't think Chris Collins is a bad choice from Northwestern because I know that they didn't have a great season this year, but he's a very solid head coach, and he already knows the Big Ten pretty well. And Iowa and Northwestern, I don't see a huge difference between how they play.
Well, minus GPA, but you know.
But yeah,
Iowa.
and yeah, and I do want to say that I have never been a fan of Fran McCaffrey or his boys at all. One of his boys did pull Caitlin Clark, so congrats to them. But I just felt like it was daddy ball, and you get everything you want because your dad is the coach, and I've never liked it. So that's besides the point.
Anyways, I think that wraps up our coaching segment on the podcast. I think it is officially time for our very own mid-major Matt to talk about some of the biggest names in the mid-major circle that he's going to tell you now on this podcast to look forward to transferring to new schools. And he has the rest of the 7 minutes we have left on this podcast to just have a way with it. So,
Take
Matt,
the floor.
take the
All right.
floor. The floor is yours for the end of the show, unless Ryan wants the interlude.
All right. Well, I'm going to start by saying we're not, I am the mid-major guy, but there are two conferences to me that, much like your parents say they don't have a favorite child, that are my favorite children, and that would be the Missouri Valley Conference and the A10, and at the Division III level, the Heartland Conference, because they all sent me scholarships, and I love Transylvania. Um, but I'm going to talk about the Missouri Valley Conference primarily right now because the A10 tournament is still going on, and there's a lot to be decided there. So what I'm going to give you is the top 5 guys that I think could make a huge impact from the Missouri Valley Conference if they were to transfer out. Now, I want to stress that none of these guys are in the portal right now. These are totally hypothetical moves, but these are just 5 guys who I watched over the course of the Missouri Valley Conference tournament that I think if they moved on could make a huge impact at the next level. Now, I'm going to start with my first selection, and oh, yeah, no fifth years or seniors on this because nobody knows how eligibility works, and I'm not even sure anymore. So I'm going to go with guys who are junior or lower, just for the sake of keeping things intact. So we're going to start now with somebody I love, a forward from the University of Evansville, Connor Turnbull. He was the Defensive Player of the Year last year in the Missouri Valley Conference for a middling to Evansville team. Now, we all love our offensive guys, but we always have to remember that, a team is often anchored by a guy they can bring off the bench who can play really good defense. I think Connor Turnbull is that guy, and if a team gets him to come off their bench, he's going to be a big impact piece. Les knows about Theo John and what guys like that can do. I think he can do that for whatever team picks him up. At number 4, I'm going with another forward, Cooper Schweiger from Valparaiso. This guy is very good at scoring. He was second team all conference this year. I think he's going to have some great potential to go out. And if somebody gets him, they're going to have a very good wing who could score the ball and has some speed to him. At number 3, I am going to go with Chase Walker, another forward from Illinois State. This guy's only a sophomore, was one of the most improved players in the league, and he made all first team. He made it the all conference first team this year. This guy, Illinois State was okay. I think this guy is by far the best player on that team. And whoever gets him is going to get a really, really good stud of a player going forward because I think he is that good. At number 2, I have the conference's freshman of the year, Always Right, one of the best names in the sport of college basketball. Absolutely love that name. The kid's from Mexico, and he scores with the grandest of ease. He almost led Valparaiso to the championship game and would have if they got like a couple more favorable calls against Bradley. This guy is, if he decides to leave, is going to be one of the great scorers for whatever team he goes to. This guy, if he joined like an Iowa or an Indiana, would just like have the time of his life. He would have the incredible NIL and he would be scoring in buckets. But for those of you paying attention, I've got 2 guys from Valparaiso on this list, which means if they stick together, they're probably going to become my new anointed team because there's a lot of scoring on that Valpo team. If they can get some really good defense going, they're going to be cooking with oil, man. They're going to be the next Dayton or New Mexico or any of those mid-major teams I like. But there's one clear-cut number 1 because we've been talking about Ben McCollum for the last 5 minutes. We might as well go with his best player, the conference player of the year, Bennett Sturts, the junior guard who came from Northwest, or whatever school McCollum was at, and has just absolutely taken the league by storm this year. He really is the real deal. And if he goes with his coach, if his coach decides to take a new position at an Iowa or in Indiana, you've got an instant starter who's not only composed but has worked his ass off to get where he is and can definitely play some defense and definitely hit some big shots. He would be like a conference player of the year type player in a Big Ten scenario, I think, if he got there. I think Bennett Sturts is that good. And it pains me, but all the guys on Bradley that I adore, whether it be Duke Dean or Zeke Montgomery or Darius Hannah, are all seniors or fifth year guys. So I can't really add them to this list because I don't know if they have any eligibility left. If they happen to find some eligibility, like, under the couch cushions, then if they decide to leave, they are going to have one hell of a ride whoever picks them up. But just to summarize, I have my top 5 from the Missouri Valley guys to watch if they decide to leave are Connor Turnbull of Evansville. Oh, crud. My list flight up. Cooper Schweiger from Valpo. Chase Walker from Illinois State. Always Right from Valpo. And Bennett Sturts from Drake. 5 guys who are a junior or younger who, if they decide to enter the portal and make the jump, are definitely going to have an impact on next year's college basketball season because they are that good. And unless Ryan has something else to say, I'm just going to remind everybody to like and subscribe to the Less is More Sports Talk podcast. Follow Les on Twitter if you can find him, and follow I think he calls it the Side Quest at BeansDad08 on TikTok. He always posts a video just about every other day, and it's a lot of fun. So be sure to follow Les on TikTok. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast today. And with that being said, Ryan, do you have any last thoughts before we head off into what should be a very exciting championship Saturday in college basketball?
Yeah, I just wanted to say while you were doing that, that reminded me of Chris Collinsworth. Here's a guy. Here's
Now,
a guy.
well, you got to tell them what the guys do. Otherwise, they'll get confused,
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
You got to tell them what they do. All right. How much does Louisville win tonight and why?
Should be by 100, I think. I mean, Chucky Hepburn might have 10 steals.
He can't defend himself. We can dunk on Duke.
Yeah.
Come on, James Scott. Use the Bane Mask for good. Destroy Duke.